Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Executive Spotlight series for SIIA. I am delighted to be joined today by Steve Bernstein, who is the CEO of Waypoint Group. So, Steve, thank you for being with me today. Waypoint Group is a consultancy focused on understanding customer needs and prioritizing action. Yet not too long ago, you created your own SaaS product called TopBox. How have you led your team through the change from being a consultancy to now also being an independent software vendor?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, right? So thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be talking to you and the folks that you work with. But basically with Waypoint Group, I'm one of the founders here, and we, being in the customer success and customer feedback and improvement sort of business ourselves, it's obviously very important that we practice what we preach. And what we learned very early on, so in our business, we focus 100% on B2B organizations, helping B2B companies improve their operations, improve their ability to deliver customer success, and make sure the organization is really aligned around that sort of idea of customer centricity. And what we found, obviously, is that it's very different from B2C. The buying committee exists in a B2B organization, right? That doesn't typically exist in B2C, meaning that there are multiple people involved in buying decisions. People come and go from accounts, and sort of fundamentally, there's no definition or there's no real entity called a customer, right? There's an account. And forming the relationships with those accounts in B2B is totally different. Anyway, bottom line is we found that although we very much wanted to focus only on consulting, the technology recommendations we were making for our B2B clients to be able to scale the program did not work effectively. In other words, the technologies that were available were very consumer oriented in their approach. And since we focus ourselves on customer success and making sure that our clients are able to rapidly realize the benefits that we helped consult around and build the program around, we sort of had no choice but to make sure that we were providing the right technology. And since there was nothing available, we hired engineers, we built out a team, and for many years we now have been evangelizing this product. So it's been very much aligned around customer success, and it's been an easy way to make sure that the whole company is coming along with the technology as part of the overall solution.
Now, you and I have been to a few events together, and I've heard you talk a lot about Net Promoter Scores and what NPS truly tells a B2B firm. So what do you think B2B firms are doing wrong when calculating and NPS, and how can they look at NPS differently to really show a more accurate picture?
Also a really great question. I think by and large, most companies lack the idea of what I call representativeness. I don't think that's a word, but the idea of representation especially in customer feedback and Net Promoter Scores is very important, because if you want to make big bets, you want to make the right decisions based on what the data are telling you and based on how you're going to really improve. It's critical that you're making sure that you're hearing from the right people at the right time. And so what a lot of companies do is sort of send out a survey request. They get maybe 5 to 10% response rates. And what we fundamentally found in our research is that that is not only wildly non-representative, but also the fact that those response rates are so low tends to be a pretty good indication of the strength of the relationships with their customers. In other words, what our research has found that the response rate tends to be a pretty good measure of customer engagement if you're positioning the feedback process in the right light. So what my overarching recommendation would be for any company, especially B2B companies, undertaking an NPS, a Net Promoter Oriented program or a customer feedback program, do the kinds of things that can really drive up your response rates. We've written about this tremendously on our blog, but bottom line is response rate has a numerator, right? The number of responses coming in, and it has a denominator, which is how many people are we inviting. And you've got to make sure you're talking to the right people, the right contacts, which is your denominator, and doing the right kind of engaging activities that can drive up the numerator. Together, when you look at that picture, you can get a 50, 60, 70% response rate. We did a webinar actually about 2 weeks ago with a company that was achieving 90% response rate. This is definitely achievable. It takes some work, but the payoff is significant in terms of not only having better, more trustworthy data, but actually stronger relationships with your customers that lead to higher retention, renewal, and cross-sell, upsell opportunities.
So let's dig a little bit further into that, talking about feedback and the feedback you request from your customers really being everything when you're talking customer success. So can you go in a little bit deeper about, how do you ensure you have the right tools in place to use that feedback to really engage your customers, correctly?
Right. It's extremely important to make sure that you've got everybody in the boat, so to speak. Um, Look, it takes a whole company to drive customer success. If one department could do it, then what do you need everybody else in the company for, right? I mean, I don't mean to be flip about it, but it takes a whole company to drive customer success. Products have to be doing the right kinds of things. Marketing has to be setting and managing the right kind of expectations. Sales has to do similar, setting and managing the right expectations, but also forming relationships and working those expectations through a sales cycle. Customer success teams, maybe they're post sales, have to be making sure that they're continuously aligning against those customer expectations, delivering results against those expectations. So bottom line is really it takes a whole company. And before you start to get feedback, before you start to undergo any kind of NPS measurement program, very critical to make sure that you've got everybody in the boat. Is everybody really willing to take action based on the voice of customer, right? Are they going to reprioritize the kinds of things that they thought they were going to do, right? If those priorities end up being different in terms of what the customers are saying is required. And not that we're not saying necessarily that you have to do everything that, what your customers tell you they want, right? But you do have to make sure that you're setting those right expectations, and you do have to make sure that you're closing the loop with customers, right? And being very clear what you can and what you can't do, and where you have workarounds or where you don't have workarounds. And the better you can do that with the right kind of alignment internally inside the company, the better you'll be able to ultimately improve a net promoter score, which will obviously then translate into economic benefits, accelerated profitable growth for the business.
Well, you kind of segued into my next question for me, talking about alignment within a company. I mean, Waypoint Group is a bit rare. I mean, maybe not as rare today, but still rare, as you are a virtual company. All your employees are remote from each other. So as a CEO, how do you encourage that collaboration or maintain the company's focus on customer success in a virtual environment?
Yeah. It starts with overall, I guess, alignment on one objective. And for us, especially since we're in this business of customer success, right? It's easy for us to, I guess, say, we want to align around customer success. For us, it's client success, making sure our clients are realizing, perceiving the success that we're able to deliver for them. And so if we're first of all aligned on that objective, right? And secondly, I think I guess every company says they hire the best, right? I would say we hire the best also. But what's different for us is I think the trust that we place on our employees. Once people start, it's very common in many companies for the leadership to sort of not trust the expertise that they've hired, right? So maybe one week during an interview process, these people walked on water and they were the best people in the world. Now they're hired and they're doing the job. And for some reason, a lot of companies treat those very same employees, as if they no longer have the expertise that they, were so excited about during the interview process. We don't operate that way. One of the significant things that we do is a process of setting and managing your own commitments. So everybody is very much focused on making commitments, evangelizing those commitments, and holding each other accountable against those commitments. And it all starts again aligned against customer success, client success for us. So as long as we're trusting each other to meet the commitments and demonstrating that we are meeting our commitments and that we're all doing this in the best interest of the client's success and demonstrating that repeatedly, then we just haven't had any issues with collaboration.
That's great. So finally, Steve, how do you define success? And what takeaways would you want other entrepreneurs to know who are working to achieve their goals?
Well, I would say if clients are successful, if customers are successful, right, then the company will be successful. So every company has to be able to define what is the measure of success for your customers, for your clients. Now, some customers might measure it differently or have different expectations. So perhaps it varies by segment. But bottom line is know what your metrics are. How are you going to measure success for you and your customers? For us, actually, one of the most prominent metrics that we measure in terms of the success of our clients, and I mentioned this before through your great question, was about response rates and representativeness, right? If we have great response rates, great representative data that's tied to financials that's demonstrably representative, then we know our clients have an easier time in being successful. So that becomes a leading indicator for us. Every company should have a metric that they hang their hat on that becomes a metric that they own, a metric that they are best in the world at delivering. And sales and marketing and delivery efforts need to be aligned against that one metric. That's my advice. And make sure then that you're setting and managing the right expectations around that metrics, but also make sure that your customers are not just discussing that metric, but actually that you're helping them see the results of that metric. Usually they won't see it or perceive it on their own. You got to lead the horse to water, and you got to make them drink, right? You got to salt the oats, if you will. You got to make sure that they really see and value that success measure and keep it top of mind on an ongoing way. So you help your clients be successful with the metric that's important to them ultimately. A metric that's also important to you is what your company stands for, then that's going to help your own company be successful as well.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. For more information on Waypoint Group and SIIA, please visit our websites. Thank you.